This is the Alive Again podcast, a ministry of St. Anne Catholic Church in Richmond Hill, Georgia. On this podcast, you will find homilies and talks by Father Dawid, our pastor, and guest homilies from visiting priests.
There is a story that probably represents all of us about, or the humanity, about a man who spent years searching for happiness. As we know, that's our drive in our life. He worked hard and built a successful career, bought a beautiful home, and provided well for his family, so completed the American dream. Yet despite all of these accomplishments, he often felt a strange emptiness, the aching inside of our hearts. And one day, while cleaning out a closet, he found a photograph of himself as a young boy standing next to his father. And looking at the picture, he suddenly realized what had been missing. Throughout his life, he had spent so much time pursuing success that he had forgotten the simple joy of belonging to someone, of being loved, guided, and protected, as it is much easier when we are children. I don't know about you, but every time I happen to see a picture of myself when I was a little boy, especially when I went home to Poland, and my mother lives there, of course, so she has pictures of me and my brother and my sister, but it seems like more of myself. Maybe because I'm a priest, and it is what it is. And so I sit and they like kind of haunt me there, right? I sit in this room and I look at this picture and I'm thinking like, yeah, that was stupid time in my life. And then I look at another picture and thinking like, okay, that was very innocent time of my life. And it's not like, pointless exercise. It actually, for me, it means a lot. It's like a confrontation of, first of all, the innocence of what we are as children, the beauty of a child, right? The hope that is put into this child, the spontaneousness, and the hopes, and then the confrontation of what is my life actually. And so I am not disappointed where my life is actually, because, when I look in those pictures and I look at my life right now, I'm a priest, and to me, this mystery will never be exhausted. How did God choose me? Like, why would He bother with me? There are so many better choices. There's so many better men that I knew, and yet they are not priests, and I am, and that will be an inexhaustible mystery for me for the rest of my life. And I will always appreciate it. But the confrontation of, am I happy with everything else? With the way I develop as a human being, spiritually. The question of happiness, what does that even mean? And I think the photograph of us being a child or younger, and I know it happens to many of you, especially if you're even older, and you look at the photograph of your, childhood picture, and what is that you see? Are you satisfied? Are you happy with yourself? Sometimes we see that, you watch movies and someone is doing this or that, whether they're doing something good or something evil, and then the detective, let's say, for someone who does something evil, comes into the house and asks the family, do you have any picture of your son or of your husband who did something horrible? And they have a picture of a child, and they look at the child and it's like, how did it happen? Like, what went wrong? It's a great mystery of life, but we have to pay attention to it. And so this man, in many ways, his story is the history of humanity itself. We spend much of our life searching for meaning and security and happiness, and often forgetting that the deepest desire of the human heart is not truly possessing something, because many people who possess much are disappointed. They wear a mask, but to belong to someone, and that someone is with capital S, someone. That is precisely the message running through today's readings. In the first reading, God reminds the Israelites who they are. They had been slaves in Egypt, powerless and oppressed, unable to save themselves, yet God intervened. He didn't have to, But he intervened. And then through Moses, he leads them out of slavery, carries them through the desert, and brings them to Mount Sinai. And there he says something very powerful, but also very fatherly. I bore you up on eagle's wings and brought you here to myself. Like an eagle. To myself. Not to this place of milk and honey, not to prosperity, not to a better place, but to myself. Remember that, because you are here in church right now, and it's not an accident. It's not really only your effort, which I know it's a lot, to get up, to get your kids ready, your husband ready, or wait for your wife, to get ready. All of this is not easy. And then the dynamic of driving and discussion and temptation to fights, all kinds of things. But you are here because God called you to Himself. The Holy Spirit inspired you, despite of all the reasons why maybe you said I don't want to go. But He brought you just like He brought them to Mount Sinai. This is the place. To Himself. Remember that. I brought you to myself. Before giving them commandments, before the teaching, before establishing the covenant, He reminds them that the purpose of life is relationship with Him. God rescued them because He wanted them to belong to Him, which of course they will forget later on, right? They will think what? They will become so full of themselves. He rescued us because we are so special. He rescued us because we can do no wrong. And that's why they will all be destroyed eventually, the Israelites. They will be in exile because they will forget the initial reason for the relationship with God and rescuing them, which was, I want you for myself. Catholics, God wants you for Himself. They were chosen because God loved them and wanted them. And the same truth appears even more powerfully in the life of St. Paul, the enemy of Christ. But then, as now he is converted to Christ, he reflects on the mystery and sacrifice of Jesus, and he says very powerful words for all of us. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Now, I know that's my story, because the years leading up to me leaving my family, my city, my friends, and going to seminary were the years of the biggest confusion. And I wasn't happy with myself. I was constantly confused, and I was trying to be happy, whatever that means. But I wasn't happy with myself that I was failing so much. I wasn't happy that I wasn't keeping myself to the Christian standard, and it didn't make me happy. It made me frustrated, and I was sad, and I was looking for meaning in life, and I was constantly coming back to God, pleading with Him through confession or through prayer. That's exhausting, by the way. That's why the greatest moment of life is when we finally humble ourselves before God and we say, okay, from that moment on, things will be different. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Human beings usually reserve their sacrifices for their people they consider worthy. So you parents, for your children, right? You'll say, I would be ready to die. Maybe for your spouse, you'll be ready to die. But for a foreigner, for a member of another religion, it would not be so easy in a sense. But Christ gives His life for us when we are still far from Him, foreigners in a way. He loved us before we loved Him. He sought us before He sought Him. And He reconciled us before we even realized that we desperately needed reconciliation. And that's where Christianity begins, not with our search for God, but with His search for us. And so that brings us to the gospel. We see that this love, how this love looks like in practice. Jesus looks upon the crowd and He sees people who are troubled and abandoned. Notice, I don't think they realize that. I think it's only Jesus who sees them truly how they are. He sees them as troubled and abandoned, as sheep without a shepherd. I don't know if they felt that way, but He saw it through their masks. He saw it because that's what He does. He sees beyond appearances. He sees the loneliness hidden behind smiles. the fears hidden behind success, the wounds hidden behind busy schedules and good looks. We live in this obsession with good looks, and sometimes it actually makes people look worse. If they give in too much to the temptation to look good, they look worse. Another temptation. We have to be very careful about that. Cult of the body. Eventually it will show you're aging. Trust me. No matter what happens. Jesus sees humanity wandering without direction, searching for meaning in all wrong places, and his response is pity. They would say, some of them would say, why is he pitying me? I feel good. I have a successful life. But Jesus sees through it. He sees on a deeper level. And so then something great happens. Rather than personally going to every town and every village himself, Jesus turns to the 12 ordinary men, just like Father Noah, Father Gregory, and myself. Yes, he says he's ordinary men. Father Noah, ordinary? Ordinary man. Called to do extraordinary things. Without these robes, without our collars, without our cassocks, without the fact that we are priests, you would probably not notice us in the crowd. We would just be another guy in the crowd. You would not be interested. And we should always remember that. We should always know it. That what is going on in our life is because of the calling, because of the collar, because of the priesthood. Ordinary men called to do extraordinary things. Why did Jesus choose us? Well, because he saw the potential that we can become when we stay close to him. That's love, right? In marriage. If you love your spouse, you're going to look at the person and say I will make sure that you're even better than this as a spouse. I see the potential and I'll do everything in my power to help you bring it about. Not in an invasive way, but in the way God does that. He works with us. And so he brings us, he calls us, even though some of them will deny him, some of them will doubt him, some of them will betray him. Jesus calls them anyway, because he sees what they can become with him, what you can become with him. But without him, there will be not much to look at the end of life. If you arrive to the end of your life without Jesus Christ in the Eucharist, there will be not much to look at. It's a pretty sad sight. Very different, though, when you are arriving with Jesus. So maybe that's the message for the Richmond Hill today. St. Anne's, because it's easy to think that the mission of the church belongs to someone else. The priests, the deacons, the religious sisters or theologians. But every baptized person, every baptized has been called by God. Every one of us has been carried, in a sense, on eagle's wings through difficult moments of our life. And every one of us has been loved by Christ despite our sins. And every one of us has been given a mission. Now, my mission in a church is very clear. I am to be a priest. What is your mission? You have one. Saint Therese of Lisieux is a great example of someone who was looking for that mission, and she spent most of her very short life searching for it, and eventually she was digging into the scriptures, and you guys who have read her story remember what she said. She found the passage in the New Testament, and she said, I will be love. In the church, in the Catholic Church, I will be love. What is your mission? For some, this mission will be found in the family, teaching children to pray and leading them to Mass. What a great vocation, parents, you have, to make sure that you go to church on Sunday and bring your family. Can there be something more important for God than to see that? What a great mission. All you need to do is stay faithful to it, and it's going to be very easy for you before the Lord. For others, it is witnessing to Christ in workplaces. Some of you are so charged with like, yeah, Father, you should say this, you should say that. Why don't you say it at work when you go there? Why am I supposed to say all of those things? When you go to work, you want to be so strong? Preach it, brother. Preach it, sister. Some of you standing for the truth. Some of you caring for aging parents. Some of you simply being faithful spouses and parents, which is not simple. And some of you helping others, inviting someone back to the faith, or building up this community, or sustaining it with your talent and with your time. The details may differ, but the call is the same. None of us were chosen to simply sit back in the pew, receive God's blessing, and wait for inspirational homilies that make me feel good. That's not our vocation. You know, Catholics, we don't even come for homilies to church. That's secondary. What do we come for? To encounter Jesus in the Eucharist. And we see that when, when homilies are really bad and people still come back, and we priests talk about it, and we're like, why do they still come? Because we are not Protestants. We are not building our congregations on homilies or on sermons, on teachings. We build it on Jesus Christ. And the sermon is to lead you to Him, not to lead you to me. Because when I leave, are you also going to leave? I used to be in a parish like this, where everybody was building everything on this one priest. Then he retired and then he left. You know how many people left that parish? 30%. And I would meet them sometimes in a store and they would say like, oh yeah, I used to go there when this priest was there. And I'm like, what's up with you now? Well, he's not there anymore. That's what I'm the most afraid of as a priest. And I've made every effort possible to not lead you to myself, but to lead you to Jesus. So that when I go, who cares? You know your way to Jesus. So please remember that. It's not about Father Noah, it's not about me, it's not about what he said. You are to find your way to Christ, because I'm not going to save you. Christ will. Last Sunday, we had a mission as a Catholic community. What was the mission? It was Corpus Christi, and as Catholics, we take Jesus out into the streets, or whatever we can to walk, in this town. That was our mission. Corpus Christi is meant to take out Jesus, what we worship in the Eucharist, and show Him to the world. And we did it. And there will be many opportunities for you to partake in the mission of the church. The question is only, will you do it? Will you do it? And that leads us to the last part, which is Jesus says that the harvest is abundant and the laborers are few. And looking around the world today, those words seem more true than ever. There are countless people searching for hope and meaning and forgiveness and purpose, exhausted with one video after another of people leading them to whatever they're leading them. Many do not even know what they are looking for anymore. Yet Christ continues to call laborers to His harvest. He continues to call young men, even in our parish, to be priests, young women to be religious sisters, and others to be faithful husbands and wives, devoted parents to teach their children the faith, and others to be courageous disciples. The question is not whether God is calling. He is calling. The question is whether we are listening and responding. And so in a way, today is Father Noah's first Mass, so we thank God for this blessing. I mean, we've been praying for a second priest ever since I came here, 4 years. He will join us here in the harvest of St. Anne. And his vocation is a reminder that Christ still calls laborers into His harvest. The well of grace is not dry. It's actually pretty full with graces. We just have to take it. And it's also a reminder that every vocation begins with someone saying yes to God's invitation. Someone actually sacrificing something for Jesus and trusting Jesus that He will not trick him. Jesus is not going to trick you, Father. He's not. The priesthood is the greatest mystery and the most beautiful gift we can receive. And I will always be grateful. I cannot even still imagine that he would bother with me. Maybe more he would bother with you, but it doesn't matter. And so as we gather around this altar of the Eucharist and his true presence, we see once again the pattern of salvation unfolding before us. God gathers his people on a Sunday and sends them forth into the world. And so the Mass really starts here, but it doesn't really end. You guys should take it out so it can be lived out, and so others can be attracted to the love that you have experienced in Jesus Christ.
Thank you for listening. If this podcast helped you grow in your Catholic faith, consider subscribing, sharing with others, liking, or leaving a review wherever you listen.